If you have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, at some point a doctor looked you in the eye and said, "Watch your carbs," and that was it. Nobody sat you down and explained that the single ingredient doing the most damage to your blood sugar is sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now: ordinary white flour. The average American eats roughly 130 pounds of wheat flour every year. Most of it is refined, and most people have no idea what that word actually means. Refined means the grain has been stripped, the fiber is gone, the healthy fats are gone, the vitamins and minerals are gone. What is left is pure starch, and starch is nothing more than glucose molecules chained together. Your digestive system snaps those chains apart in minutes. That is why a single slice of white bread spikes your blood sugar almost as fast as drinking a glass of sugar water. The glycemic index confirms it. White bread scores around 75 out of 100. Pure glucose scores 100. You are closer to eating raw sugar than you think. And here is the part that should bother you. This is not controversial science. This is basic biochemistry that every medical student learns in year 1. Yet somehow, it never makes it into a 12-minute office visit. Nobody walks you through it. Nobody shows you the alternatives. That is what this video is for. If you want health information explained in plain language, with no drama and no sugarcoating, subscribe and hit like. Now let me show you what that flour is actually doing inside your body, because once you see the mechanism, you will never look at a piece of white bread the same way again. Picture this. You eat a piece of white toast in the morning. Before you even swallow, an enzyme in your saliva called amylase has already started breaking the starch into sugar. By the time that bread reaches your small intestine, the glucose is flooding into your bloodstream in a single fast wave. Your pancreas detects the spike immediately and fires a massive burst of insulin. Insulin is the hormone that opens the door for glucose to leave your blood and enter your cells. Think of it as a key. One spike, one burst of insulin. The key turns, the door opens, glucose goes in, blood sugar comes back down. No problem. But here is where it gets dangerous, especially after 50. When those spikes happen every single day: breakfast toast, a sandwich at lunch, pasta at dinner, your cells are getting hammered with insulin signal after insulin signal. Over time, they stop responding. The lock wears out. The key still turns, but the door barely opens. Your pancreas has to produce more and more insulin just to get the same result. That is insulin resistance. And eventually, the pancreas cannot keep up. Blood sugar stays elevated. That is the road from prediabetes to full type 2 diabetes. It does not happen overnight. It happens over years of repeated daily flour-driven spikes that nobody warned you about. Now I want to be very clear about something. This is not about eliminating flour from your life. That is not realistic and it is not necessary. This is about replacing the flour that works against your body with flours that actually work with it. Flours that slow down glucose absorption, support your insulin system, and keep your blood sugar stable instead of slamming it up and crashing it back down. That is exactly what I am going to walk you through, starting right now. The first flour on this list is one you can find in almost any grocery store, and it is one of the simplest swaps you will ever make. Almond flour, that is it. Finely ground blanched almonds. Nothing added, nothing removed. No chemical processing, no industrial refining, just almonds turned into powder. Now let me show you why this matters for your blood sugar. 1 cup of white flour contains roughly 95 grams of carbohydrates. 1 cup of almond flour contains about 10. That difference is enormous, but the story does not stop at carbs. Almond flour is high in monounsaturated fats, the same type of fat found in olive oil, the kind that actually supports cardiovascular health rather than undermining it. And it is rich in magnesium, a mineral that most diabetics are quietly deficient in. Magnesium plays a direct role in how your cells respond to insulin. Research consistently shows that people with higher magnesium intake have measurably better insulin sensitivity. The glycemic index of almond flour sits around 1, white flour sits at 75. That means after eating almond flour, your blood sugar barely moves. Your pancreas does not have to fire an emergency burst of insulin. The system stays calm. In the kitchen, almond flour works well for baking, for pancakes, as a coating for chicken or fish. I will be honest with you about the texture. It is denser and moister than wheat flour. Recipes need slight adjustment, usually a bit more egg or a bit less liquid. You learn this quickly. One warning, and I give this to every patient. Almond flour is calorie dense because almonds are calorie dense. The benefit here is blood sugar stability, not a free pass to eat unlimited quantities. Portion awareness still matters. But if the choice is between a flour that spikes your glucose to dangerous levels and one that keeps it steady, that choice is not complicated. The second flour on this list has one feature that puts it in a category of its own: fiber. Coconut flour contains roughly 3 to 4 times the fiber of white flour per serving, and if you have diabetes or prediabetes, fiber is not a nice extra. It is your single best mechanical defense against blood sugar spikes. Let me explain why in plain terms. Fiber slows down the speed at which glucose enters your bloodstream. Without fiber, the starch in flour breaks down fast and hits your blood all at once. That is the spike. That is the insulin emergency. With fiber, the same glucose trickles in gradually. The rise is slower, lower, and far more manageable. Your pancreas can handle it comfortably without overreacting. Think of it this way. Eating white flour is like opening a fire hydrant into your bloodstream. Eating coconut flour is like turning on a garden hose. Same water, completely different pressure. On top of the fiber, coconut flour contains medium-chain triglycerides, a type of fat your body processes differently from most dietary fats. Some research links these fats to improved insulin response, which makes coconut flour useful on 2 fronts at once. Now, the practical side. Coconut flour absorbs an extraordinary amount of liquid. You use far less of it than you would wheat flour. Roughly a quarter cup of coconut flour replaces a full cup of white flour. If you use the same amount as wheat flour, you will end up with something closer to a brick than a pancake. It pairs well with almond flour in baking, and the combination gives you a texture much closer to what you are used to. One honest note, coconut flour has a mild coconut taste. In some dishes that works beautifully, in others, it does not. That is worth knowing before you try to make a savory gravy with it. The third flour on this list is one of the most underused ingredients in Western kitchens, and that is genuinely a shame. Chickpea flour, also called besan, has been a staple in Indian and Mediterranean cooking for centuries. Millions of people have been baking with it for longer than white flour has existed in its current form. Nutritionally, chickpea flour does something none of the previous flours do quite as well. It delivers high protein, high fiber, and moderate complex carbohydrates all in one ingredient. Complex is the word that matters here. Unlike the simple starch in white flour, which your body tears apart in minutes, the carbohydrates in chickpea flour are structurally complex. Your digestive system has to work significantly harder and longer to break them down. Slow breakdown means slow glucose release. No spike, no insulin emergency. But here is the part that surprised me when I first saw the research. Meals high in legume-based fiber do not just improve your blood sugar response at that meal. They improve it at your next meal as well. This is called the second meal effect. The fiber feeds beneficial bacteria in your gut that produce short-chain fatty acids, and those fatty acids improve how your cells respond to insulin hours later. You eat chickpea flour flatbread at lunch, and your blood sugar behaves better at dinner. That is a compounding benefit you do not get from most foods. Chickpea flour is also rich in B vitamins and iron, both of which many people over 50 are quietly low on. In the kitchen, it makes excellent flatbreads, works as a binder in savory dishes, and creates a simple, crispy batter for vegetables. Honest note on taste. It has a slightly earthy, nutty flavor. Some people love it immediately. Others need a few tries. That is normal. Now I have shown you 3 flours that can genuinely change how your body handles blood sugar. But here is what I tell every patient who sits across from me. Knowing what to eat is only half the equation. The other half is knowing exactly where your blood sugar stands right now, whether your insulin resistance has already crossed a clinical line, and whether there are screenings or newer treatment options available to you that nobody has mentioned. Care Health is a free platform that connects you with diabetes screenings, blood sugar monitoring programs, and clinical trials for metabolic health treatments in your area. You fill in a short form, your date of birth, gender, whether you have kids under 18, takes about 30 seconds. Care Health matches you with relevant options near you. No cost, no commitment. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera. If you are watching on your phone, tap the channel profile picture to find the link. You just learned how the food you eat directly impacts your insulin system. This is the step where you find out what your body actually needs right now. Now let me show you 2 more flours that most people have never even heard of, and one of them may be the single best option on this entire list. The fourth flour on this list is one that most of you have never heard of. That is not your fault. It is almost invisible in American grocery stores. But in the Mediterranean and across South America, people have been eating it for generations. Lupin flour. Lupins are a legume, in the same family as chickpeas and lentils. And the reason this flour deserves your attention is its nutritional profile, which is frankly hard to believe the first time you see it. Lupin flour has one of the lowest carbohydrate counts of any flour in existence, lower than coconut flour, lower than almond flour. At the same time, it delivers roughly 40% protein by weight. That combination is almost unheard of in a single ingredient, and protein matters enormously for blood sugar control. Protein triggers a much smaller, much slower insulin response than carbohydrates do. It also promotes satiety, that feeling of being genuinely full and satisfied after a meal. When you feel full, you are far less likely to reach for the high glycemic snack 2 hours later. That snack is often where the real damage happens. Research backs this up directly. Studies show that when lupin flour was added to bread recipes, the post-meal blood sugar spike in participants dropped significantly compared to the exact same bread made with wheat flour. Same bread, different flour, measurably different result. Practically, lupin flour has a slightly bitter undertone on its own. It works best blended with another flour on this list. A 30/70ths mix with almond flour, for instance, produces excellent results in baking without any bitterness coming through. One important warning. Lupins and peanuts are in related legume families, and cross-reactivity is documented. If you have a peanut allergy, check with your doctor before using lupin flour. That is not optional. The fifth flour on this list does something none of the other four can do. It delivers a significant dose of omega-3 fatty acids. That makes flaxseed flour unique, and for anyone dealing with insulin resistance, that difference matters more than you might expect. Let me explain why. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the key drivers behind insulin resistance. Your cells are not just randomly deciding to ignore insulin. In many cases, inflammatory signals in your tissues are actively interfering with the insulin receptors on your cells. Omega-3 fatty acids reduce that systemic inflammation. They do not just help your blood sugar indirectly, they go after one of the root causes of why your cells stopped responding to insulin in the first place. On top of the omega-3s, flaxseed flour is extremely high in both soluble and insoluble fiber. These do two different jobs. Soluble fiber forms a gel-like substance in your gut that physically slows down glucose absorption. It acts as a brake on the speed at which sugar enters your blood. Insoluble fiber promotes healthy digestion and regular bowel movements, which matters because gut health and blood sugar regulation are far more tightly connected than most people realize. The glycemic index of flaxseed flour is negligible. Your blood sugar essentially does not respond to it. In the kitchen, you can stir it into oatmeal, blend it into smoothies, or mix it into any of the other flours on this list for added nutrition. It also works as an egg substitute in baking. 1 tablespoon of flaxseed flour plus 3 tablespoons of water replaces 1 egg. One storage detail that is worth knowing. Flaxseed flour goes rancid quickly because of those same omega-3 oils that make it valuable. Buy it in small quantities and keep it in the refrigerator or freezer, not the pantry shelf. I have been doing this long enough to know what happens next. You watch this video, you feel motivated, you tell yourself you are going to make changes, and then tomorrow morning, you reach for the same white bread because the habit is comfortable and the alternatives feel like too much effort. That is not a character flaw. That is how human behavior works. Change that feels overwhelming does not stick. Change that feels small does. So here is a system that actually works. Week 1. Pick 1 flour from this list, whichever one sounds most appealing to you. Use it in 1 single meal. Coat your chicken in almond flour instead of white flour. Make pancakes with coconut flour on a Sunday morning. That is it. 1 swap, 1 meal, 1 week. Week 2, add a second swap. Week 3, a third. You are not trying to eliminate every grain from your diet overnight. You are retraining your kitchen and your palate gradually. That is how lasting change actually happens. Now, the objection I hear most often. These flours are more expensive than white flour. That is true per bag. But the math is more honest than it looks at first glance. You use far less of most of these per recipe, especially coconut flour, so the cost per serving is closer than you expect. And compare the price of a bag of almond flour to the cost of diabetes medication, insulin supplies, or the long-term complications of uncontrolled blood sugar. A bag of specialty flour costs a few dollars. A month of insulin can cost hundreds. Prevention is always cheaper than treatment. One final reminder, and I say this to every patient: these flours are tools, not cures. They work best as part of an overall pattern. Regular movement, managed stress, consistent medical monitoring. No single ingredient fixes diabetes on its own, but the right combination of daily habits, repeated consistently, is what actually changes outcomes. Let me bring this together. 5 flours. Almond flour. Extremely low in carbs, rich in magnesium, keeps your blood sugar almost completely flat. Coconut flour, loaded with fiber that slows glucose absorption to a manageable pace. Chickpea flour, high in protein and complex carbohydrates with a second meal effect that improves your blood sugar response hours after you eat it. Lupin flour, the lowest carbohydrate count of any flour on this list with 40% protein by weight. And flaxseed flour, the only one that delivers omega-3 fatty acids to fight the inflammation driving your insulin resistance at the root. The goal is not perfection. It is not about throwing out everything in your pantry tomorrow. It is about replacing the one ingredient that spikes your blood sugar the hardest with options that give your pancreas room to do its job. That is a change you can make this week. Everything in this video is for your understanding and education. Your situation is specific to you, and using this information as a starting point for a real conversation with your doctor will always be more useful than trying to manage things on your own. And remember, that free health screening link is in the description. 30 seconds could make a real difference for your blood sugar and your long-term health. Take care of yourself.